You are 29 years old. You are standing on the limestone steps of the Ridgeford Courthouse on a Tuesday morning in October of 1893, and the wind the old folks call the widow's breath is moving through the gap between the building and the livery stable across the street with a sound like something being slowly torn apart. A lawyer you have never met has just told you that your husband left you $460 in debt to Gerald Voss. The same Gerald Voss who owns half the storefronts on Main Street on paper, the same Gerald Voss who smiled at your wedding and pressed a silver dollar into Thomas's palm and called him son, the same Gerald Voss who, you now understand, has never lost a debt in his life. You have 4 months. After that, everything you ever owned with Thomas, the house, the 4 acres, the wedding quilt your grandmother stitched by lamplight when you were 9 years old belongs to him. You buried your husband in August. You buried your only son the winter before that, 14 months old, a boy named after Thomas's father, a boy with red hair and one small dimple on his left cheek and a laugh that sounded like water moving over stones. You have no money. You have no family left. You have a piece of useless land on top of a mountain that nobody in Ridgeford wants. And you have a book, a small brown book your husband ordered in the spring but never came back for, a book with a sentence on page 47 underlined in pencil by Thomas's own hand. The earth does not fight the cold. It outlasts it. You do not yet know what those words will cost you, or what they will save. The lawyer is still talking. His name is Orrin Prendergast, and he is reading the document for the second time more quietly, as if the act of reading it again might produce a different result. It does not. You hear his voice without processing the words. The way you hear rain on a roof when you are thinking about something else. The way you hear your own heartbeat when you wake at 3 in the morning and cannot remember why you are afraid. You are not afraid. That is the strange part. You should be afraid. A reasonable woman would be afraid. A reasonable woman would sit down on the steps and weep into her gloves and let the men around her decide what comes next. You are not a reasonable woman this morning. You are something else. You have not yet found the word for it. Mrs. Callahan. Prendergast is looking at you. He has a kind face, you realize. Not kind in the way men sometimes pretend to be kind. Kind in the way of a man who has read too many bad documents to too many widows and has stopped being able to pretend it does not hurt him. Mrs. Callahan, did you hear me? I heard you. There are options. Partial settlements, payment arrangements. Mr. Voss is sometimes willing to negotiate. If you would let me speak to him on your behalf. No. The word comes out before you have decided to say it. Prendergast stops. I'm sorry? No, you say again. I'll handle Mr. Voss myself when the time comes. Hista. He has not called you by your first name before. You look up at him. He is older than your father would have been if your father had lived. He has gray at his temples and ink on his fingers and a daughter your age that he sent to a teaching school in Charleston 3 years ago because he wanted her to have something other than this. Hester, he says again, he will not be kind to you. I know what he will be. Then let me help. You can't. You say it without unkindness. You say it the way you might tell someone the date or the price of flour. You say it the way a woman says a thing she has already decided. Prendergast looks down at the document, folds the paper carefully, hands it to you. 4 months, he says. 4 months. You agree. You walk away from him into the wind. The bell over Verna's door rings when you push it open. Verna Dunbar is behind the counter, where she has been behind the counter for the better part of 20 years. A solid-framed woman in her mid-40s with gray beginning at both temples. She runs the store the way some people run countries, quietly, without ever raising her voice. She looks up. Her face does the careful thing that everyone in Ridgeford's face does when they look at you these days, a slight adjustment, a managed neutrality, built out of the same material as pity but trying very hard not to be. You set your bag on the counter. Verna, Hista, I need to settle Thomas's account. She looks at you for a long moment. Then she reaches under the counter and pulls out a small ledger, opens it, turns it so you can see the entries. 3 lines of Thomas's careful handwriting, items he had been paying for in installments since March, a bag of dried beans, a half-wheel of cheese, a box of matches, and one more item, a book. He came in twice a week for 6 weeks, Verna says, always paid what he could, always asked if the book had come yet. It came in the 2nd week of August. She does not finish the sentence. She does not need to. The 2nd week of August is the week Thomas died in the shaft at Harmon Creek when the timber gave way and the roof came down on 3 men. I kept it for you, Verna says. She reaches under the counter again. The book is smaller than you expected. The cover is dark brown, gone soft at the corners. The spine reads, Practical Frontier Construction, 1,887 inches, faded gilt letters. You hold it in both hands. It is heavier than it looks. Verna. Yes. Why was he buying a book on frontier construction? Verna Dunbar looks at you across the counter. She is not a woman who lies. She is also not a woman who volunteers information that has not been asked for in the right way. I don't know, Hester. He never said, but you knew it was important. I knew he wanted it, and you kept it. I kept it. You stand there with the book in your hands. Verna reaches under the counter one more time. This time she comes up with the items from the ledger, the beans, the cheese, the matches. She slides them toward you. Already paid for, she says. You do not move. Hester, she says, take them, please. You take them. You hand her the list you have been carrying in your coat pocket since you left the courthouse. She reads it. What her face does is not what you expected. There is no dramatic response, no challenge, no confrontation. There is instead a very brief pause. The kind that happens when a person's understanding of a situation updates itself faster than their expression can follow. A canvas tent, rated for mountain conditions, a full-weight pickaxe, a long-handled coal shovel, a mason's hammer, a set of stone chisels, graduated, 50 pounds of dried beans, 20 pounds of flour, salt, matches, candles enough to last months. Verna sets the list down. She looks at you. Hista. Yes, that is not the list of a woman who is leaving. No, you say, it isn't. She waits. You do not explain. She fills the order without commentary, which is, in its own way, the loudest thing she has ever said to you. When everything is assembled and priced, she stands behind the counter with her hands flat against the wood, looks down at them for a moment, then looks up. The stone-capped ground is stubborn, she says. I know it suits stubborn women. You almost smile. You do not. You pay her with most of what you have. She gives you back $2 in change. You try to refuse them. She closes her hand over yours and presses the coins into your palm. You will need this more than I will, she says. You do not argue. You put the coins in your pocket and you carry your supplies out into the wind. You hire the Garrett boy from down the street to help you carry your things to the base of the Stone Cap Ridge Trail. You do not hire him to carry them up the trail. You carry those yourself. It takes 3 trips. By the time you make the last climb, the light is already going orange in the southwest, and the widow's breath is finding its evening register lower in pitch, more settled into its purpose. The trail up to Stone Cap Ridge is the kind of path that has been made by use rather than intention. Your feet know this trail? You walked it as a girl. You walked it the first summer you knew Thomas, when his uncle was still alive, and the 4 acres on the shoulder of the ridge were a place the 2 of you went on Sunday afternoons to look down at the valley and talk about what your life would be. You had a list then. 2 children, a vegetable garden, a milk cow named Patience because Thomas thought that was funny, a porch wide enough to dance on. You did not get any of those things. You got 1 boy who lived 14 months and 1 husband who lived 8 years and 1 piece of mountain that nobody wants and 1 book with a sentence underlined in pencil. The thought arrives without bitterness. This surprises you. You had expected bitterness. You had been bracing for it since August. You had assumed it would come for you eventually the way the cold comes for everything else. It has not come. What has come instead is a clarity that you cannot quite name, a feeling like a door that you thought was locked has been standing ajar for some time. The parcel of land your husband inherited from his uncle and which has now passed to you occupies roughly 4 acres on the broad shoulder of the ridge. It is not picturesque in any way that the word is usually intended. The ridge shoulder is exposed on 3 sides, open to weather from the north, the west, and the northeast, sheltered only by the continuing rise of the mountain to the south. The soil is thin everywhere, absent in places. The bare granite shows through in long gray shelves and isolated boulders that sit in the thin grass like the ruins of something much older than any human settlement. Near the center of the parcel stands the remains of what had once been a shelter, stone-walled, collapsed inward, a rough rectangle of fallen stone around a depression that had once been an earthen floor. The stones are the local granite, dense and dark gray. A single twisted hawthorn has established itself against the north wall remnant, bent by decades of prevailing wind into a shape that is almost theatrical in its suffering. You set down your last load. You walk the perimeter of the collapsed structure. You stop at the northeast corner. 2 of the original foundation stones still stand in place there. They are set deeper than the wall stones, anchored into the soil at a level below where the frost usually penetrates. They are still plumb, even though everything built on top of them has failed. You crouch to look at the face of the larger foundation stone, and you find what you had half expected to find without knowing you expected it, cut into the granite, in careful, if not expert, letters. 2 initials and a year. Eha, Itsen Babe Tisha Joe. The cuts are old, the edges softened by weathering. The letters have taken on the dark gray of the surrounding stone so that they are visible only in raking light. You trace the letters with 1 finger. Ha. 14 years ago, you do not know yet whose initials they are. You only know they are there, which means someone had been here before you, had set stones in the earth of this place, had stayed long enough to leave a mark, and had eventually gone away or been gone. The tent goes up in the lee of the collapsed north wall. The widow's breath finds the tent with the focused interest of something that recognizes a new intrusion on its territory and intends to assess it thoroughly. You drive the stakes deeper. You add stones to the base of the windward side. You eat cold beans from the can you opened on the way up the trail, sitting on one of the fallen wall stones with your back to the wind and the tent at your left. Below and to the southwest, the lights of Ridgeford are coming on one by one, each one a small orange window of fire. You watch them for a while. You do not feel what you had expected to feel, which was longing. You feel instead the particular clarity that arrives when a situation has been stripped of its options. You go into the tent when full dark comes. You light one of the candles and place it on the flat stone you brought inside to serve as a surface. You open the book. The pages have that slightly stiff quality of old paper in cold air. Reluctant to turn cleanly, the book falls open to its habitual place, the spot where the spine has been creased most often. A chapter beginning on page 47. The chapter heading reads, Earth-Sheltered Structures of the American Frontier Principles and Construction. Below it, a single sentence underlined in soft pencil. The earth does not fight the cold, it outlasts it. A structure built within the earth rather than upon it borrows this patience. The underlining is in Thomas's hand. You recognize the pressure of it. He had been here in this text, had read this sentence, had drawn a line under it, had moved on to the next page. You sit with the book open in your lap. You think about Thomas reading this in the spring, in March, April, May, the months when you now know he had already borrowed the money from Voss, the months when he had been carrying the weight of that debt alone. He had not been a dishonest man. He had been a man who believed the problem would be solved before it became a problem, who lived in the 2-week future where everything had worked out. He had been wrong, which in the end produces the same result. You read the chapter from the beginning, then again more slowly, The candle burns down a quarter of its length. You lie back on the bedroll. You think about your grandmother. You think about Maud Whitfield, who is 11 years dead now, but whose voice you still hear sometimes when you are working a problem with your hands. Maud grew up on the far side of the same ridge system, in a hollow so narrow the sun only reached the floor of it for 4 months of the year. She had developed the relationship with the natural world that people develop in places like that. Not mystical, not romantic, functional. One of the things she said to you, sitting by the iron stove in her winter kitchen with a cup of tea cooling in her hands, was this: the summer sun drives heat into the ground the way rain drives into dry soil, slow and deep. By the time winter gets here, that heat is 10 feet down. The earth keeps a secret summer, child, in its bones. The cold can't reach that deep before spring comes around to start the cycle again. You had stored this away as a child, stores away the things grandmothers say, in the category of old wisdom. Probably true, not immediately applicable. You fall asleep thinking about it. Morning arrives gray and cold. You eat a piece of yesterday's bread. You stand at the edge of the ruin and you look at the rectangle of fallen stones and you begin to understand that you have no idea what you are doing. You have a pickaxe. You have a book. You have the underlined sentence of a dead husband and the faded initials of a woman you never met. This is not a plan. This is the wreckage of a plan that has not yet been built. You pick up the pickaxe anyway. You start moving stones. By mid-morning, you have cleared roughly the eastern third of the collapsed floor space. You can see the original earthen floor now, packed hard by years of use. The floor is lower than the surrounding grade by about 2 feet. You drive a chisel into the soil to test depth. The top layer is exactly as hard as you expected. But below that, at roughly 18 inches, the soil becomes noticeably easier to penetrate. Not soft, not warm in any dramatic sense, but different in a way that is measurable. You drive the chisel again. You hold your bare hand near the hole in the full cold of an October morning at 32 degrees, with the widow's breath running at its regular pace. But it is less cold. You have been on your knees for 20 minutes before you understand what you are feeling. The moment of understanding is not cinematic. It is quiet and slightly disorienting. Your grandmother's voice arrives whole. The earth keeps a secret summer, child, in its bones. The ground is not freezing down here the way the surface is freezing. The surface is cold because it is in direct contact with the air and the wind and the radiation of heat into the clear night sky. But the mass of the earth below a certain depth does not participate in the season the same way. It is running on the accumulated warmth of the summer that has just passed. You sit back on your heels. You look at the rectangle of the ruin around you. Everyone in the valley below builds up. They see the ground as the source of the cold. The enemy, what if the ground isn't the enemy? The thought arrives whole. You are not going to build a house on this land. You are going to build a house in it. You are going to dig into the slope, enlarge the existing hollow, let the mountain be your walls. Not fight the cold, outlast it, the way Thomas had underlined in soft pencil on page 47. You pick up the pickaxe, you drive it into the earth, you hear him before you see him. The sound of footsteps on the stone sections of the trail carries well in the cold air. Whoever is coming is not making any attempt to be quiet, which means it is not Voss. You set down the chisel, you wait. The man who appears at the edge of the ruin site is in his early 60s, thickly built in the way of men who have been doing physical work their entire lives. His face carries the specific texture of skin that has been outdoors in Appalachian weather for decades. He is leading a mule with a packed frame. He stops at the edge of the cleared area. His name is Silas Halloran. You know him by sight, the way, the neighbors of neighbors in a county this size, by seeing him at the Ridgeford Supply Store, at the summer fair. At the edges of events, he was too self-contained to enter fully. He runs a farm about a mile down the valley. Alone since his wife died of pneumonia 11 winters past. That is what people say. His eyes move across the site with the systematic attention of a man accustomed to assessing terrain. They stop at the excavated corner. Then they stop at the foundation stone in the northeast. At the initials, his face does something then that you have not seen a man's face do before. A complete shift in its underlying weather. Not an expression so much as a removal of one. He stands very still. The wind moves through the site in a sustained gust, and both of you lean into it slightly and say nothing while it passes. When it has passed, he speaks. That's my wife's writing. 3 words you were not expecting. You look at him, your wife, Ruth. You look back at the stone. Ruth Halloran. He nods. Once, she came up here in the winter of '79, he says, alone. She built something. I never knew what exactly. She stayed the winter. She came down in the spring and tried to tell people. Nobody listened, including me. He stops. 2 years later, she got sick walking through cold rain to a family who needed help. She died in February of '82. The wind comes through again. I thought I was the only one who knew she came up here. He looks at you for the first time. What are you doing, Mrs. Callahan? You stand up. You wipe your hands on your skirt. I'm doing what she did. He does not answer for a long time. When he does, his voice is quieter than the wind. Then I would like to help you. If you will let me, you do not say yes. You do not say no. You look at him. You look at the initials. You look at the cleared ground. The widow's breath moves through Stonecap Ridge in its evening register. And somewhere below you, 10 feet down in the dark of the mountain, the summer of 1893 is still living in the bones of the earth, waiting for a woman who has finally learned to listen. Silas does not come every day. He comes on Tuesdays and Fridays. He brings food. He brings rope. He brings, on the 3rd visit, a second pickaxe with a shorter handle. For when your arms give out, he says. They haven't given out. They will. He sets it down by the chisels, and he does not press the point. He does not stay long. He does not enter the tent. He does not ask what you have done or what you plan to do. He looks at the excavation. He nods at whatever he sees there. He drinks from the tin cup you offer him, and he hands it back, and he walks down the trail with his mule. The first 3 visits, he says almost nothing about Ruth. The 4th visit, he says her name once, and then he says nothing else about her for the rest of the day. You understand that this is a man who is rationing himself, a man who has not spoken his wife's name out loud in 11 years, who is testing whether the saying of it will still do to him what it used to do. You let him ration. The work changes you. You did not expect this. You expected your hands to change. Blisters, calluses, the split skin at the knuckles that comes from cold and water and stone. You braced for those. What you did not brace for is the way your body has begun to know things that your mind has not yet been told. Your shoulders know which angle the pickaxe wants. Your knees know when the ground is going to give and when it is going to hold. Your back knows the exact weight at which a stone stops being one-person work and becomes two-person work, and your back tells you this before you have lifted it by some signal sent up from the lower spine that you do not have words for. You are becoming, by increments, a person physically suited to this work. This is not a transformation you sought. This is not a transformation you anticipated. It is happening anyway. The first wall falls on a Tuesday. You are not surprised when it falls. You are surprised by how quietly it falls. You had expected drama, a rumble, a warning. Instead, the East Course just leans, slowly, the way a tired person leans against a door frame at the end of a long day. And then it does not stop leaning. It tips inward in a slow, almost dignified collapse. Stone after stone settling into the floor of the excavation with the patient sound of things returning to where they had always wanted to be. When it is done, you stand in the cold and you look at the stones distributed across the floor and you understand something you had not understood before. You had been building the retaining walls the way you had been taught implicitly, without instruction that structures were built from the outside imposing an idea of order onto material that had its own ideas. The stones were not cooperating. You had a plan that the material was supposed to cooperate with. You had been ignoring what the material was telling you. You do not curse. You do not sit down. You walk the perimeter of what you have knocked apart. You look at each stone individually. The long granite slab you had been using as a third course header is slightly bowed along its length. You had placed it bowed side down, which means its weight was distributed at 2 points, rather than across the full contact surface, which means every stone above it was working against itself. You turn the slab over, you reset it bowed side up, you rebuild the wall from that course, stone by stone, slower this time. By late afternoon, the wall has reached a height you had achieved twice before, and it does not move. You press against it with both hands. It presses back. You do not feel triumph. You feel the specific, muted satisfaction of a problem that has been solved by understanding it rather than overcoming it, which is a different thing entirely. The fifth visit is the one where Silas finally talks about Ruth. He comes up the trail on a Friday morning when the first real frost has whitened the grass and stayed there past sunrise. He brings dried apples and a piece of cured ham wrapped in cloth and a small wooden crate. He sets the crate down on a foundation stone. He sits on the stone next to it. He looks at the crate for a long time before he opens it. Inside is a journal, a small one, leather bound, the leather gone dark at the edges from being held by hands that knew it well. He lifts it out. "I have not read this in 9 years, he says. You sit down on the stone across from him. You wait. "Ruth kept it from the year she came up here," he says. "Through the winter she stayed. Through the 2 summers after. The last entry is from January of '82, 3 weeks before she died." He smooths the cover with his thumb. I tried to read it after she was gone. I got as far as the first page. I could not get past her handwriting. You nod. I put it in a box. I put the box in the attic. I have known it was there every day for 11 years, and I have not gone up to get it until last Tuesday. He looks at you. "Last Tuesday, I came home from this ridge, and I went up to the attic, and I took it down, and I sat with it for 3 nights. And then I read it, and then I came back." He opens the journal. He turns to a page near the back. He hands it to you. Ruth Halloran's handwriting is careful and angular, the hand of a woman who learned to write in a one-room schoolhouse and never lost the formality of it. The entry is dated October the 12th, 1881. You read it. "I think about the woman who will come after me. I do not know who she will be. I do not know when. I only know that what I have learned here is too dear to die with me, and that the people in the valley do not yet have ears for it. They will, some day. Not in my time, perhaps not in the time of the woman who comes next. But someone will hear, eventually. The earth is patient. We must learn to be also. If a woman finds this, if a woman is reading these words in a cold tent on the shoulder of Stonecap Ridge with her own breath, making clouds in the candlelight, and her own hands cracked from work, she did not know she was capable of, I am sorry I could not be there to tell you in person. The ground is not your enemy. The summer is still down there. Listen for it. You read the entry twice. You set the journal down on your knee. You look at the foundation stone with the initials. You look at Silas. She knew, you say. She knew. She knew I was coming. She knew someone was coming. You turn one more page back. You see another entry, shorter, 3 days earlier. Silas asked me again today why I would not let it go. I told him I cannot let it go. He does not understand. I do not blame him. He will. After you close the journal, you hand it back. He does not look at you. She told me I would understand after, he says. I did not know what after meant. I thought she meant after she had explained it better. He swallows. She meant after she was gone. The wind moves through Stonecap Ridge in a long, low pull that bends the dead grass flat against the ground. Silas Halloran is 62 years old. He is sitting on a foundation stone on a mountain his wife loved. He does not cry, but something in his face is doing what crying does. Without the water, you do not say anything. You let him sit. When he stands again, he does not hand you the journal. He sets it down on the stone between you. This is yours now, he says. Silas, it is yours, Hester. She wrote it for you. He walks back down the trail. You sit with the journal on your lap for a long time before you carry it inside the tent and place it on the flat stone next to the book. 2 books. One sentence underlined in pencil by a man who is dead. One journal written in careful, angular hand by a woman who is dead. You are not alone up here. You have not been alone up here for some time. You just hadn't known it. Voss comes up the trail on a Wednesday in the 3rd week of November. You hear his progress before you see him. The sound of good boots on stone, unhurried. You do not stop working. You finish setting the stone in your hand. You press it, you test it, then you turn. Gerald Voss is wearing the same kind of coat he wears in town. Good wool, dark. The sort of coat that announces a certain income level and a certain detachment from outdoor work. He stops at the rim of the excavation. He looks at what you have built. The walls are above grade on both sides now. The opening has been cut back into the slope by nearly 8 feet. His face does the thing men's faces do when they are recalibrating their understanding of something. He does not control it in time. You see it. You file it away. He recovers. Hista, Mr. Voss, I came to make sure you'd had time to consider your situation fully. I've considered it. The offer I made stands. It is a fair price for land that has no practical use. He looks at the excavation again. More than fair, given what I am seeing here. What are you seeing? He looks at you steadily. A woman working herself to ruin on a piece of ground that isn't worth the effort she's putting into it. You stand up. You look at him directly for the first time since he arrived. Something in the quality of your attention makes him stop talking. Mr. Voss, yes. Second time I'll ask. What do you want this land for? He smiles. I want what Thomas owed me. Land is land, Hester, and the clock on that obligation is running. I know what the clock is doing. He looks around the site once more. In that look, you read something you have not seen in him before. It is not the casual dismissiveness of a man indulging a widow's eccentricity. It is something more focused, more specifically directed at the land itself. He is looking at the ridge, at the slope, at the ground, at the high ground above your site. He does not stay long. He leaves without the agreement he came for. You watch him pick his way back down the trail. You note the direction of his last glance before the trail bends and takes him out of sight. Not at you. Up the ridge, toward the high ground above Stone Cap. You sit by the candle that night and you go through Thomas's papers. The full collection. You find what you had looked at before and dismissed as a clerical notation. A half sheet of paper in Thomas's handwriting, with a row of figures and initials and the notation, partial satisfaction of obligation, and beside it the initials OP. You had assumed this was something from the Harmon Creek investment. You set it under the candle now. You read it again. The figures match almost exactly half the total outstanding to Voss. The date is 6 weeks before Thomas died. Orrin Prendergast has the initials OP, but Prendergast had given no indication at the courthouse reading that any payment had been made. He had read the full debt as outstanding. Either Prendergast did not know about this payment, or he did know and had not mentioned it. You fold the paper. You put it in your coat pocket, separate from the rest. The next morning you walk down the mountain. You go to Orrin Prendergast's office above the dry goods store. A small office, careful eyes behind it. You put the paper on his desk. You watch his face. His face does not change. But his right hand, which has been resting beside his ledger, moves slightly. A small reflexive adjustment, minimal enough. You see it. He sees, you see it. Where did you find this? In Thomas's papers, the initials are OP. There are other people in this county with those initials. There are. but only one of them is a lawyer who was present at the reading of Thomas's estate and did not mention that half the outstanding debt to Gerald Voss may have already been settled. You let that sit. I am not here to accuse you of anything. I am here because I think you are the kind of man who has a reason for everything he does. Prendergast sits back in his chair. The oil lamp on his desk makes his shadow large on the wall behind him. Orville Preston, he says finally. Not me. Orville Preston, who was Voss's business partner until '91 when they had a falling out that ended in Preston leaving the county. Preston's initials are also O.P. He slides the paper back across the desk toward you. And what that paper suggests, if it means what I think it means, is that Preston paid half of Thomas's debt to Voss without Voss's knowledge, which would mean Voss has been collecting on a debt that was partially discharged without telling you. The room is quiet enough that you can hear the wind finding the gap under the office door. Is that illegal? Collecting a debt that has been partially discharged without disclosing the discharge is fraud in West Virginia. In 1893, he looks at you steadily. I would need Preston to confirm. I would need the original receipt, and I would need time. I have 3 weeks. I will write to Preston tonight. He is in Lewisburg now. The post takes 4 days each direction. That is 8 days gone. He picks up his pen. Go back to your house, Hester. Let me do this part. You stand. You walk to the door. You turn back. Mr. Prendergast. Yes. Why didn't you mention this at the courthouse? Because I didn't know about it. If I had known, I would have. I understand it. You leave. You walk down the stairs. You step out into the cold street, and you think about a thing you did not say out loud. Orville Preston is a name you have heard before. You just cannot remember where. You remember on the climb back up. You are halfway up the trail, past the Second Creek crossing. You stop. You stand in the snow. You remember Ruth Halloran's journal. There is a name in it. You did not register it at the time. You climb the rest of the way faster than you should. You enter the tent. You pick up the journal. You start at the beginning, reading carefully. You find it in an entry dated April of 1880. My cousin Orville came to see me today. He walked all the way from Lewisburg. He stayed 2 nights. He asked me to come back down. I told him I would not come down yet. He understood. He has always understood me better than the others. He told me if I ever needed anything at all to send for him, he gave me an address. I have folded it into the back cover of this book. You turn to the back cover. You feel inside the leather. There is a small folded slip of paper there. The paper is old. The fold is deep. You unfold it carefully. Orville Preston, Greenbrier County Land Office, Lewisburg, West Virginia. In Ruth Halloran's careful, angular hand, you sit on the floor of the tent. You hold the slip of paper. Orville Preston was not Voss's business partner first. Orville Preston was Ruth Halloran's cousin first. By a decade, he paid Thomas's debt because he had been waiting 11 years to find someone like Ruth again. He had been waiting for you. You sit with this through the afternoon. You do not go back to the wall. Voss came up here last Wednesday and looked at the high ground above your site with an interest he was not disclosing. Ruth's cousin paid half of Thomas's debt without telling anyone. A man who left the county after falling out with Voss in 1891. Ruth knew something about this land that nobody else in the valley knew. Voss knows something about this land that nobody else in the valley knew. These two things may be the same thing. You stand up. You go outside. You climb the slope above the excavation. It is steep. The snow is patchy. You reach the higher shelf. You walk it slowly. Halfway along the shelf, there is a place where the granite shows through in a long shelf, and the shelf has a face on its southern side where the rock drops about 3 feet. The face has been hidden by a long tangle of bramble. You push the bramble aside with your boot. You see what is underneath. Aqualsem, black, dense, running diagonally along the rock face, maybe 2 feet thick, maybe more. Aqualsem. In a county where coal is everything, in a year when the new rail line to Charleston has just opened, you think about the geography of this ridge. There is only one route from this ground down to the rail line. It runs through your land, the land you have been digging into. The land Voss has been trying to buy for years. The land your husband's uncle owned before his accident in 1892 that the county sheriff called a hunting mishap. You stand on the upper shelf of Stonecap Ridge with the coal seam at your feet, and you understand for the first time exactly what Voss wants and exactly what he has been willing to do to get it. You write a letter. Prendergast helps you write it. It goes to Orville Preston in Lewisburg, 4 days each way. You wait. The first 3 days of waiting are the hardest you have ever spent on this ridge, because now you are waiting for someone else to do the part you cannot do. You work to fill the hours. You set the western retaining wall. You haul stones up from the lower slope. You eat when Silas brings food. You sleep when the candle burns down. The letter comes back on the 8th day. Prendergast walks it up to you himself. You meet him at the second creek crossing because you have been watching the trail since dawn. He hands you the letter. You break the seal. You read it standing in the snow. Orville Preston confirms the payment. He confirms the date. He confirms the amount. And he confirms what you already suspected. He has been watching Voss for 2 years, ever since the falling out in 91. It was not, as the county supposed, about a previous business venture. It was about Ruth. Voss had approached Preston in the summer of 91 with a proposition, a coal extraction operation on Stonecap Ridge. Preston had asked who owned the land. Voss had told him a man named Hiram Callahan, an older man, failing health, a man who could probably be persuaded. Preston had refused. Preston had told Voss that the land was where his cousin Ruth had spent the last good years of her life. Preston had told Voss that he would never see that land cleared for coal. Voss had told him then in those exact words, Preston writes, "We will see about that." A year later, Hiram Callahan died in a hunting accident. Preston believed. Preston had no proof, but Preston believed. When the land passed to Hiram's nephew Thomas, Preston had watched and waited. When Thomas had borrowed money from Voss in March, Preston had understood what was happening. Preston had moved. Preston had paid half the debt, secretly buying Thomas time. Hoping Thomas would discover the deception and act, Thomas had not had time. Thomas had died in August. You stand in the snow with the letter and you read the last paragraph twice. Mrs. Callahan, I am sorry I did not come to you sooner. I have lived for 11 years with the conviction that I let my cousin die alone in a fight she could not win because I did not believe her enough. I have been trying to make that right ever since. I would like, with your permission, to come to Ridgeford and stand with you when the time comes. Please write back if you will have me. Orville Preston. You fold the letter, you put it in your coat pocket, you look at Prendergast. This is enough to take to the circuit court. With Preston's testimony, the partial discharge is provable. And if we can establish the pattern, the approach to Preston, the threats, the timing of Hiram Callahan's death, we have something larger than a debt dispute. How long would that take? Months? Maybe a year? I do not have months. I know I have until February. I need to finish my house. I need to get through the winter. After that, after I have proven that I can outlast what is on this mountain, I will come down, and I will help you do whatever needs to be done to Voss. He notes. Until February, then. Until February. You finish the roof in the first week of December. 5 granite slabs. The third one was the one that nearly killed you. The rope shifted at the near edge. You felt it in the line before you saw it. A change in the tension's character, a slight wrongness. You had a second, maybe 2. You could not run. You dropped straight down, pulled your legs to your chest. The slab moved. It did not go where you had been standing. It went 3 feet to the left. It took your left foot with it for about 18 inches. Tutus. Not the ankle, not the shin. Tutus. A problem you could manage. You bind the toes against the uninjured ones inside the boot. You finish the roof 3 days later. You move the last slab limping. When the final stone drops into position, the sound it makes is the sound of something permanent. You stand on it. You feel nothing move. You walk inside. You light a candle. You sit on the floor with your back against the south wall. You are inside. You are inside the mountain. You are inside the mountain. Ruth Halloran sat inside in the winter of '79. You are inside the mountain. Thomas had underlined a sentence about in the spring before he died. You close your eyes. The candle does not flicker. The flame stands straight up in the still air. The walls hold the temperature of the earth that surrounds them. You finish the door on a Thursday. That night, you write to Orville Preston. You tell him yes, come whenever the spring trails are passable. You seal the letter. You set it on the stone shelf next to the books. You will carry it down to Verna's the next time you go. For now, you turn to the work that remains, which is the work of preparing for the winter that is on its way. You spend the next 4 days laying in food, bringing up water from the spring, sealing the small gaps between the roof slabs with packed clay, checking the chimney draw on the small drum stove you have rigged into the southwest corner. On the 5th day, you climb to the upper shelf to gather dry wood from the dead pine you have been working through. You look out toward the northwest. You stop. The sky is wrong. Not wrong in a way most people would notice, wrong in the specific way you learned to notice as a child, walking the hollows with your father, who could read a sky the way other men read a newspaper. The clouds along the northwest ridge are too low. Their bottoms are too dark. The light underneath them has a faint, oily quality. You have only seen a sky like this twice in your life. The first time was in March of 1888. The storm that came through that week kept the hollow where your family lived buried for 11 days. 4 children in the next county over froze in a wagon their father had not been able to dig back to. The second time was the night your son died. You stand on the upper shelf and you look at the sky and you do not move for a long time. Then you turn. You climb back down to your house. You stop at the edge of the cleared ground. You look at the trail, the deer trail that runs along the south side of the slope. You walked it yesterday morning. There were fresh tracks in it then, a doe and 2 fawns coming down from the high ground. You walked it this morning too. Tracks again, different ones. A buck, 2 more does, all moving down, all in the same direction. The deer are moving down off the high ridges. 3 days before any storm arrives. That is what your father taught you. 3 days. You go inside. You bar the door. You light the candle. You sit on the floor and you do the only thing left to do. You wait. The storm does not arrive. The world simply stops being the world you recognize. By midnight on the first night, the wind that has been your companion for 2 months has gone silent. This is the wrong silence. You know it the way you knew when your son was 14 months old and you walked past the cradle on a winter morning that the silence in the room was not the silence of sleep. Wrong silence. You have learned to know it. You sit up on your bedroll. You light the candle. You wait. It comes at 10 minutes past midnight. It comes not with sound but with pressure. And then the wind returns. But it is not the widow's breath. It is something the widow's breath has been a small rehearsal for. The roof above you takes the first gust and does not move. You feel it in the packed earth beneath your bedroll before you hear it in the air, a vibration that comes up through the floor. You put your palm against the wall. The wall is not cold. The candle does not flicker. The flame stands straight as a painted line. Outside, the mountain has begun to receive the storm. Inside, you are sitting on the floor in a candle's small light, with 2 books on the shelf and a folded letter in your coat pocket. And you are warm. You are warm. The second night is when Silas's roof beam breaks. You will not know this for another 6 hours. But it is happening a mile down the valley while you sit by the stove and feed it the last of the scavenged branchwood. The crack is loud enough that he describes it later as a rifle shot from directly above. He lies still for a moment. Then he sits up. He looks at the ceiling. He sees the fracture running its full length. The beam is old-growth timber, 2 feet in diameter, 60 years of holding. The storm has put a snow load on the roof that exceeds, by some margin he cannot calculate, everything the previous 60 years prepared it for. He does not panic. Panic is not available to him as a response. He dresses in everything he owns that is wearable. This takes him 20 minutes, because his fingers are already impaired. He takes Ruth's photograph from the mantel, a small sepia portrait from the 3rd year of their marriage. He puts it inside his shirt, against his chest. He takes the heavy walking stick he cut from an ash tree the previous spring. He opens the door. What meets him is not weather in any sense he has previously experienced. It is a physical medium. The snow is thigh-deep in the yard, hip-deep where it has drifted. The wind hits the side of his face with a cold, so specific and focused it registers as a targeted thing. He aims himself northeast, uphill, toward Stonecap Ridge, because it is the only direction that contains anything he believes might still be standing. He falls the first time at the fence line. He falls a second time 20 yards past it, into a drift that comes up to his chest. He loses the path almost immediately. He navigates by the slope. The cold is not painful after the first 10 minutes. This is the information that frightens him more than the cold itself. He stops. He beats his hands against his thighs until sensation returns. To burning, that is genuinely painful, and therefore genuinely reassuring. Then he moves on. He falls 7 more times before he reaches the upper slope. The last 2 falls he does not immediately get up from. He lies face down in the snow, the second to last time. The thought that arrives is not a sentence. It is a name. Ruth, just her name, which is also a direction. He decides it is a way. He gets up. He moves. You hear him before you see him. You hear him because the mountain conducts sound differently from inside than from outside. You have been awake for 2 hours. You hear the impact against your east retaining wall. You hear it the way you would hear someone setting a hand against the inside of your chest. You stand. You go to the door. You open it 3 inches. You see nothing but white. You hear then the second knock. A fist. 3 times. Irregular. Not the wind. À personne. You have the door open in 3 seconds. What you see is a man-shaped accumulation of snow and ice. You have one arm around him before you process the specific details of who he is. You walk him backward into the entrance, duck him under the low frame, get the door shut behind you. The roar outside halves, then halves again. You and he are in the room. He is not capable of removing his own coat. You work through the buttons. You wrap him in the blankets from your bed. You put water on the stove. You say nothing. There is nothing useful to say. Silas sits on the floor against the south wall. The shaking that takes him is the productive kind. You watch it. You watch the 3 phases. Violent, then irregular, then subsiding into a continuous fine tremor. That means the core temperature is recovering. You put the mug of heated water into his hands, closing his fingers around it. He looks around the room. He is reassessing everything he has understood about what you have been doing for the past 2 months. His eyes find the foundation stone in the southwest wall, the one you repositioned 3 weeks ago so the initials face inward. Aha. He looks at it for a long time. My roof beam. Yes. It cracked through the whole center span. I know. If I had stayed... He does not finish. He stands up. Slowly. He walks across the room. He stops in front of the stone. He puts his hand on the letters. Hut. He keeps his hand there. His shoulders begin to shake. This is not the productive shaking of the body restarting. This is the other shaking. He cries. He cries silently, the way men of his generation cry, with the whole face but without sound. He does not turn around. He does not want you to see him. But there is no other room. You sit on the floor on your side of the stove. You do not look at him. You give him that. After a long time, he speaks. He speaks to the stone. I did not believe her. I let her come down off this mountain in the spring of '80, and I told her she had lost her mind. I told her she had spent too long alone. I told her she needed to forget about this place. She died believing her own husband thought she was broken. He turns then. She was right, Hester. She was right, and I did not believe her, and she died of it. You do not move from your place by the stove. You came back. You say, what? You came back. You read the journal. You brought it to me. You came up this mountain every Tuesday and every Friday. It was 11 years late. It was not too late. He looks at the stone. How do you know? You think about Ruth writing the entry on October the 12th, 1881. I do not know who she will be. I do not know when. You think about who delivered it. Because she sent you with it, you say. He stares at you. She left the journal for me. But she had no way of knowing it would be me. She had no way of getting it to whoever came after. So she left it with the one person she trusted. The one person who would still be here when the next woman came up this ridge. The one person who would be watching for her. His face does not understand yet. Silas, she left it with you. He turns back to the stone. He puts his forehead against it. He stays there for a long time. You both sleep eventually. The storm runs its full course outside. The third morning arrives without drama. By midday, the snow has stopped. By late afternoon, a pale and exhausted light is making its way through the storm's aftermath. You open the door at 4. You look at the ridge. The world has been remade. Your structure is under 3 feet of additional snow on the roof. You press upward against the interior face. You press harder. You feel nothing. The mass above you is in compression, the weight of the snow pressing the slabs against the walls, and the walls deeper into the ground. You did not understand this principle when you began. You understand it now. You go down the mountain the next morning with Silas. It takes 2 hours to descend what is normally a 20-minute trail. Ridgeford is altered in ways that will not be fully cataloged for weeks. 3 structures have lost significant roof sections. The Orrin family has lost 2 of their dairy cows. The couple named Hadley, both in their 70s, were found by their son when he dug his way to their house on the 3rd morning. They had gone to sleep in their chairs by the fire. The fire had gone out. They had not woken up. Silas tells what happened in Verna Dunbar's store, which is where people have gathered, because it is the largest heated space accessible. He tells it in the plain directness of a man reporting conditions, not performing a story. He had gone up the mountain in the storm. He had found a structure that was warmer inside than the valley houses were with their fires burning. He is standing in front of them because of it. He tells it without elaboration. The response it produces is more powerful for the absence of that framing. A silence in the room that has a different quality than the silence that precedes an expected thing. You stand by the door. Verna catches your eye from behind the counter. She does not smile. She holds your eye for a moment. And then she nods, just once. It is the loudest thing she has ever said to you. You go to Gerald Voss's office alone. You go on a Wednesday morning, 4 days after the storm is cleared. You carry a leather portfolio with 3 items in it. The half sheet of paper with Orville Preston's notation, Preston's letter. A second letter drafted by Prendergast, summarizing what Preston has confirmed. You walk through the snow. You arrive at Voss's office. You climb the stairs. You knock once. You enter without waiting for an answer. Voss is sitting at his desk. His face is whiter than it should be. The office is colder than it should be. The fire in the corner stove is low. You realize, as you step inside, that this is a man whose wood supply has run lower than he expected. This is a man who, for the first time in his adult life, has encountered a problem he could not buy his way out of. You set the portfolio on his desk. You sit down in the chair across from him. Hesta, Mr. Voss, you open the portfolio, you take out the first paper, you set it in front of him, he looks at it. Where did you get this? In Thomas's papers. This means nothing without verification. You set the second paper in front of him. Orville Preston's letter. You watch him read it. You watch his face find, for the first time since you have known him, an expression he is not able to manage in time. You watch him read about Hiram Callahan. You watch him read about the coal seam. He sets the letter down. He does not look up. Look at me, please. He looks at you. You have known about the coal seam since at least 1891. Hista, you approached Orville Preston with a plan to clear that ridge. This is, my husband's uncle died in 1892. That was a hunting accident. My husband borrowed money from you in March of this year. You knew when you lent it to him that he would not be able to repay it. This is, my husband died in August in a shaft you had inspected the previous spring. His face changes. You looked into the shaft. I asked. I have been asking. I am Thomas Callahan's widow, Mr. Voss. I have been asking quietly. Hista, I do not know if you had a hand in what happened at Harmon Creek. I do not have proof of that. Yet, you let the word yet sit between you. I do have proof of the partial discharge. I do have Preston's testimony. I do have your approach to Preston in 1891. I have enough to bring this to the circuit court in Charleston. You stop. You let him think. What do you want? 3 things. Name them. You will sign a full discharge of the debt today. In Prendergast's office. Yes. You will sign over all coal extraction rights you have purchased on the ridges adjacent to Stone Cap. Those rights will be held in trust by Mr. Prendergast on behalf of the families whose homes would be affected. Hista, I know what they are worth. So do you. So will the circuit court if I file. He closes his eyes. The third thing, you will leave this county within 30 days. You will be gone by Christmas. Hista, that is the offer. That is the only offer. He is silent for a long time. The stove pops once. He opens his eyes. Why, he says. Why, what, why this and not the circuit court? You have me. Why not take me all the way down? You think about Thomas in the shaft at Harmon Creek. You think about Hiram Callahan in the woods. You think about Ruth Halloran walking through the cold rain. Because I do not want to spend the next year of my life in a courtroom in Charleston, Mr. Voss. I want to go back to my house on Stone Cap Ridge. I want to teach the women in this county how to dig into the slope before next winter. I want to live the life that 2 people have already died handing to me. You pause, and because I am not sure I would survive proving in open court what I believe you did to my husband. He looks at the papers. He looks at you. All right, he says, you stand, you walk to the door, you turn back. If you do not sign by sundown, the offer expires. He nods. He signs by 3 in the afternoon. You watch him sign. Prendergast watches him sign. Verna Dunbar, who has come at your request, watches him sign. Voss leaves Ridgeford on the 22nd of December. He does not come back. The first of the families comes to you in April. You expected 1. You get 3. Cordelia Brewster is the first one to climb the trail. She is 61 years old. She buried her husband in the storm. He had been out checking on the Hadleys when the wind shifted. They found him on the 3rd day, 200 yards from his own door. She comes up alone. She brings a small wrapped loaf of bread, still warm from her stove. She sets it on a foundation stone. She sits on the stone next to it. She looks at the entrance to your house. She looks at the upper ridge. She looks at you. I do not want another winter like the last one, she says. No, Verna said you would teach me. I will. I cannot pay. You are not paying. She nods. I have wondered for 2 weeks how to ask you for this without being a burden. I came up here 3 times and went back down without knocking. The 4th time, I told myself I would come even if you said no. I am not going to say no, Cordelia. I know that now. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, not from crying, from the wind. I am 62 next month, she says. If I learn this, if I do this, I will be the oldest woman in this county to put her own roof on her own house. I want you to know that I am aware of how that will sound. Two people. Down there, you say, they will say a great many things. Yes, they said them about Ruth Halloran. Yes, they said them about me. They did. What did the saying of them do to either of us, Cordelia? She thinks about this. She thinks about it for a long time. Nothing, she says finally. It did nothing to either of you. No, it did not. She nuts. She stands up. When do we begin? You have begun. You climbed up here. She almost smiles. She does not. But something in her face loosens. All right then. By July, there are 3 excavations on the slopes adjacent to Stone Cap. By August, there are 4. By September, there are 6. The Brewster house is the first one finished. Cordelia spends the first night in it on the 18th of October. She tells you the next day that she woke once, not from cold, from silence. She had not slept in a quiet room in 8 months. She had forgotten what it sounded like. In the church in Ridgeford, on a Sunday in November of 1894, the deacon stands up at the end of the service and reads from a small piece of paper Verna Dunbar has placed in his hand. It is the dedication of a plaque that has been mounted on the wall by the side door, a small wooden plaque, hand-carved, made by Silas Halloran. The deacon reads, in memory of Ruth Halloran, born 1838, died 1882. She knew before we did. We did not listen. We are listening now. The congregation is quiet. Silas Halloran is sitting in the 3rd row from the back. He is sitting beside you. He is wearing his good coat. He does not cry. His face does, again, what crying does without the water. You reach over and you take his hand. He lets you take it. You sit together through the rest of the service. When you walk out of the church into the November afternoon, half the women in the congregation come up to Silas and speak Ruth's name out loud to him, one after another. Most of them are saying it for the first time in 11 years. He stands there in the doorway in his good coat. He receives Ruth's name from each of them, the way a man receives water. After all of them have spoken to him, he turns to you. Hista. Yes, she would have liked you. I know she would have liked you very much. Silas. Yes, she does. He notes. He cannot speak. You walk him back to his rebuilt house. You leave him at the door. You climb the trail home. February of 1895. You are sitting by the stove. The candle on the shelf is burning straight. You are reading the book, the brown one with the gilt letters. You have read it many times since you first opened it in October of 93. You have read every chapter. You have read every diagram. Tonight you are reading the chapter on roof construction because you are thinking about Cordelia Brewster's roof. And whether you would do it the same way if you did it again, your eye drifts. You are not sure why. Your eye drifts to the margin of page 47. The page you open first? The page with the sentence, you have looked at this page 100 times. You have looked at the underlined sentence 100 times. You have not looked at the margin of page 47. There is something there. Very small. In pencil. A pencil sharpened to a fine point, the way Thomas always kept his pencils, because he said thick pencil lines were imprecise. 8 words. You hold the page closer to the candle. You read them H, in case I don't get to show you this myself. You sit with the book on your lap. You do not move. The candle burns its straight flame. The stove ticks once as the wood settles. You feel only the page in your hands. The 8 words. The pencil pressure, the hand of your husband, who has been dead for 18 months, reaching forward from a spring afternoon in a general store in Ridgeford, when he sat down with a new book he had ordered and read the chapter that would change everything, and understood somehow, in some way you will never know, that he might not have time to bring it home, that he might not have time to tell you, that something was already moving toward him that he could feel but could not name. So he wrote you a note in the margin, in case, just in case. You put your hand flat on the page. You hold it there. You feel the slight depression in the paper. You sit with it. You sit with it for an hour. You do not cry. You did your crying in the second month. What you do is different. You receive it. You take the book. You stand up. You walk to the stone shelf. You set the book down next to Ruth's journal. You take the third book off the shelf, the one you have been writing in since the night before the storm, and you set it next to the other two. 3 books, a line of them, the book Ruth left for the woman who would come, the book Thomas left for the woman he was loving, the book you are leaving for the woman who comes next. You do not know who she will be. You do not know when. You only know that what you have learned here is too dear to die with you. You walk back to the stove. You sit down. The candle burns straight. The earth around you holds the temperature of the summer that has not yet finished giving itself up. You think about your father, who taught you to read the wind. You think about your grandmother, who told you about the secret summer in the bones of the earth. You think about your son, who lived 14 months and who lies in the small plot at the edge of the churchyard. You think about Thomas. You think about him for a long time. Then you blow out the candle. You lie down on your bedroll. You sleep without effort. The earth holds. The night passes. And the morning comes the way mornings come, eventually. Without your assistance, without your anxiety, without requiring anything from you at all, except the willingness to remain. You remain.